So, thank you, everyone, for coming here. Well, you came here because you know what you're coming for. Simon and Denny, ask us anything. I don't think you need any more introductions, right? But on stage, you have Denny Lee, senior staff, a developer advocate at Databricks.
Sure, let's go with that.
And Simon Whiteley, who I had a pleasure to spend last night singing karaoke with, so that's why it explains my voice.
Nice.
And maybe.
Yeah, if I sound ropey, there's reasons.
Yeah.
Yeah,
CTO
but you don't want to
Lansing.
admit the other reasons.
And yeah, you might have known him as our YouTube star, right? Like and subscribe.
Yes,
Lansing
like
Analytics.
and subscribe to Simon.
Oh, lovely.
There you go. Hi, everybody. Okay, so rules for today's session. Ask questions, otherwise we'll all finish in about 5 minutes, okay? And anybody that asks questions will get the socks, okay? So then there you go. And whoever asks the best question gets the sheep, okay? So that, in other words, we'll actually make it democratic. Should we make it democratic, or should we just be dictators here?
We'll see.
Okay, we'll see. We'll see. Yeah. We'll either make a democratic choice for y'all who had chose the best question.
It's the best kind of democracy choice. The
absolutely.
Surprise dictatorship.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
Surprise dictatorship. Okay.
And you're underselling the socks. These are unique Lakehouse branded socks.
Sure.
You
got it.
I'm very proud of the design. It took
Okay.
a long
No,
time.
yes. He's very proud of these socks. So give him a applause. Yes. Dude.
Oh, I'm wearing the wrong ones.
Okay, so as most of you, at least I hope you know, we are primarily data engineering questions. So, and he will, even though I'm the Databricks employee, he will answer the Databricks questions.
Any questions he's not allowed to answer, I can give an opinion on.
They're very right. That's true.
As long as they are known as opinions and not actual facts.
Yeah. So he'll have to actually constantly remind the crowd that these are opinions. And I'll answer OSS questions, and then if you have LM questions, I'll make Daniel answer them also. Is that okay, Daniel? Oh, perfect. So yes.
Expectation set.
Expectation set, yes.
We have no content, we have no slides, we have no
that
agenda.
No, you have a slide.
We have a slide.
Yeah, a slide.
That I made like literally 5 minutes ago.
Yes. Yeah.
Generated.
It's beautiful.
Mid-Journey.
I love it.
Love it.
Yes, Mid-Journey is awesome.
I didn't use yours.
I wasn't asking you. It's okay. I'm okay with Mid-Journey.
Good.
Oh my
Right.
goodness.
Questions?
Yes, I believe he was raising his hand. He was like waiting for us to shut up.
You've been raising your hand, so but yeah, just raise your hand. I'll get the mic over to you, and then you can ask questions. So
I'm gonna start it like really hard. Two questions, one for both of you. First,
he's targeting us.
where do we get the Ferris shirt?
Where do you get the which shirt, sorry?
The Ferris shirt.
The Ferris shirt, actually, they're given specifically to Delta Rust folks. Yeah,
Well, I think that's an okay t-shirt, or you've got the Dolly t-shirt.
that's true.
The cyberpunk future Dolly t-shirt.
that is a wonderful T-shirt.
Okay.
But this is only meant for Delta Rust folks, so yeah, because we want to be exclusionary and not let people in.
That's how open
No,
source
it
works.
was just a reward for all the Delta Rust folks because we actually, a lot of them clocked in a lot of hours before Summit, so this was one of our ways of doing it.
It's pretty awesome, by the way.
Cool. I'll tell Val. She's the designer. She's the one who figured it out.
So the second one, with all of the announcements about all of the AI assistant features available in Databricks now, when can we expect advancing English?
Sorry, expect what in English, sorry?
Advancing English.
When am I going to pull my finger out and do some more LLM videos? So coming out of like the past 2 days, I have a list that is insane about videos and topics we need to cover. And yeah, there's going to be, I'm going to have to start doing prompt engineering videos.
Yes, you are.
Oh, it makes me
you
sad.
Are. Yeah, you are.
But I'm well known for ranting about engineering not being engineering unless you're applying engineering principles. But then lots of the things that we've seen is actually saying, take a prompt, measure the results, make it repeatable, actually engineer how you go into it, make it unit testable, make it performant. It's like, oh, yeah, that's engineering. So I'm going to eat my words. Whilst I scoffed when I first saw it, and went, oh, God's sake. It is an emerging thing. It is like, I'm skeptical that it's a job yet.
Yeah, I agree, actually. Yes.
But as it gets deeper, as it grows, yeah, we'll be doing loads more on it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we don't get to the point when I just do videos and I don't write any code anymore because it's just, you don't need to write any code. That'll make me sad. Well, yeah, right? But yeah, there's just so much more we're going to have to do. It's going to be a more prevalent thing of everything that we do. It's, again, that mainstreamification of stuff.
Yes, yes.
Whereas it used to be very, very deep specialists who had to have a huge set of skills and a PhD and all that kind of thing, to then being, okay, there's tools you can do it a little bit quicker, to then being pretty much everyone can do it. You know, I was arguing with Gavi earlier about the vector search stuff. It's slap some document chunks. She kept saying chunks way too much in that keynote.
I know.
Slap some chunks into a Delta table, and then it's one command on the top of it to actually create a semantic search. And yeah, there's more engineering you can do into it. But the barrier to start doing some of this stuff is just getting lower and lower and lower and lower. So even I can do it. And I'm very happy to say I'm not a data scientist, but the barrier to start doing that stuff is just getting so accessible. It's crazy.
Yeah, so just to add to exactly your question and his point, even though you say it in jest, right? The context is, don't forget, when we did, again, Dolly is a proof of concept. I want to remind everybody of that, okay? It's a proof of concept. We're not actually, us as Databricks, yes, I'm actually going to wear a Databricks hat for a short while. To go ahead and actually talk about Dolly, we don't sell Dolly, okay? This is not something we sell. Dolly is a proof of concept. Why is it a proof of concept? It's a proof of concept that a 2-year-old LLM, Pytheria in this particular case, with about 15,000 rows of data could actually give you solid results, okay? It's not as good as ChatGPT, for example, especially GPT 4.0, but it actually can give you relatively solid results. Every single moment before then, we always thought we had to scrape the entire internet, basically, okay? And so because of that, that's where exactly what Simon's referring to. We're lowering the barriers because maybe we don't need nearly as much data. If you do prompt engineering, that means you can provide a little bit of the context, so that way you can even use less data. So for example, Sharon Zhu from Lamini, she went ahead, Lamini. I'm never saying her company's name right, she's gonna kill me. But for Lamini, she was talking about how actually some of her original prototypes, she only put in like maybe 100 questions, right? Remember, like before this, like 2 years ago, we were talking about, yes, let's go ahead and scrape the entire internet in order for us to build something like this. And now we're literally talking about 100 questions, right? And so just to add some little flavor to that, when we announced English SDK for Apache Spark earlier today, right? Everybody thought that, oh, it's so easy because we have this gigantic corpus of data, right? Stack Overflow, Google, whatever else. And I'm going, no, that's exactly the problem. It's too big. We have to filter it out. Prompt engineering in this case is literally figuring out, okay, anything that's RDD related, we're going to need to drop it out. We actually need to go ahead and primarily use data frames because everything, a lot of the old RDD stuff, there is some that actually works really well, but most of it's actually an anti-pattern now. So yeah. Anyways, that was me adding a little too much flavor, but yeah.
And just to add a tiny bit more flavor, I know this is still question one.
Yes.
But so like the parallels of it, I see it as often the parallels to early Spark, right? Mm-hmm. So it used to be early Spark, it's only for the giant mega,
right.
We've got like petabytes of things, and it's not a thing that everyone can do.
Yeah, correct.
And then now it's like, you can spin up Spark on a single node to just do some stuff and take advantage of some of the engine stuff. It's not what it's for, but you can do that really easily because it's easy and like it just becomes accessible. Same thing, right?
Yeah.
It's just we're on that journey, and we'll see other things pop up and go through a similar
absolutely.
journey.
Yeah, it's not just about PyPy and Docker. It's actually about can you actually make the queries easier. Okay, now we should shut up and actually let people ask questions.
So just interest of time, because I think we've got lots of interested questions here. I'm going to try to keep your
ask us anything. I thought it was just one thing.
Yeah,
anything.
Yeah. No, that's it. We're done. Bye. No.
I have a pre-question. I'm not sure if my question is in scope of this format. Is it? I have two technical Spark structure streaming question. Is this the right session or?
I mean, we can probably try to answer that.
We can give it a go.
We can give it a go. By the same token, there are definitely other structure streaming sessions around. For example, in this time slot, there actually is a session with Scott Haynes. I think Tristan's also joining him. I believe it's 2 rooms down. In which they will be talking about absolutely structured streaming. So I did want to call that out. I'm not trying to kick you out. I'm just want to let you know, like there's actually, I'm aware of a session that's literally.
I mean, easiest way, shoot your shots, and we might say no.
Yeah, exactly. That's true. We just want to call that out. That's all. Okay.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So first one, I'm aware that in Spark structure streaming, there's an API I can overload to stream the mini batch metrics to Kafka, for example.
Sure.
I'm just wondering is there a more custom metric where it's easier to kind of just write to that to a Delta table instead of I have to build another Kafka topic and stream that and just write that, enable a flag and just write that to another Delta table so I can then monitor that instead. Just enhancement ideas.
Okay, so long story short, yes. You're actually able to go ahead either use custom metrics to write to any source, but there are also multiple managed service systems that can actually leverage that for Azure Log Analytics or whatever else that do exactly that, which is basically write directly to a Delta table. So I would probably, if you're just starting off, I would probably make use of those managed services initially, and because it'll simplify your process, it'll be directly in a Delta table and you just query that to your heart's content.
Is that available in open source?
Okay, since no, because these are managed services, right? Yeah, this isn't specific to Databricks. This is any of these managed services. Let's think here.
I mean, there's various things that they all work the same way, right? They're all scraping the Spark drives output logs.
Yeah. Basically, it's a Spark history table and basically the logs, right? So basically, you're just parsing that. That's all they're really doing. So you can do the exact same thing where you basically write the logs directly to whatever blob storage you're using and then basically scrape it. There are some open source tools out there that do also already do that, but honestly, I don't have a particular choice on that one. So yeah.
So I think lessons learned is structured streaming 2 rooms down.
Yeah. Yes.
Hi, Sam. I had a quick question on the DLT.
DLT?
Yeah.
Yeah? Oh, that's
Yeah, I think that's Simon's realm of. So I know like DLT has grown a lot in capabilities in the last 6 months. But, like just, without going kind of like really deep into these topics, do you think like if I had to choose between DLT and kind of like just using Python notebooks to process like bronze to silver to gold, like why would I kind of like even go to DLT and not do the other thing?
Can certainly answer that one. It's, honestly, this is confession time. I've barely used DLT in the past year. And that's because there's been 2 competing things that Databricks have been put out, both of which saying you only get these super secret special features if you use this tool, and that's Unity Catalog and Delta Live Tables. Now, there was a limitation in Delta Live Tables that you couldn't use it in Unity Catalog, and UC is getting all these benefits, getting all the security, getting all the extra stuff. There's a massive message saying if you're using Databricks, you should be using Unity Catalog, otherwise you're going to miss out on stuff. So you're not seeing a huge amount of maturity in terms of what some people are doing in DLT if they're in a big enterprise and working with something that needs that governance layer on top. Now, so it is currently in preview that you can get the 2 to look at each other, and that just overcomes that significant barrier. So we're suddenly going to see this explosion of people using it, and things like Project Enzyme kind of announced last year is that thing specifically in DLT first, kind of just saying, actually, we can simplify it. We can make it far easier to do that stuff. And that's going, original Delta Live Tables is essentially just saving you the work of building a PySpark engine. Now, I've already built a PySpark engine that I use with iClients, and so it doesn't really make sense. But then more and more, it's going to be going, oh, but that secret source only lives in DLT. That's only there. That's only there. We were at that kind of point of transformation now when it will be weighing up going, it depends. Consultancy answer. It depends how complex. It depends how many tables. It depends if you're doing a giant map of thousands of tables with dependencies. You may want to do something custom in there so you've got the fine-tuned kind of thing rather than doing something black box. But it might be you just go, you know what, it's easy. It might also be a mix. So it might be that, so kind of generally the way we look at it is there's pieces that are so automated. Land a table of data into bronze, pick up that table of data and do some cleansing and put it into a silver. That's a one-to-one-to-one. There's no business transformation. There's no extra things. It's check what expectations I need, check what data cleaning rules I need. It's not that hard to write that as a PySpark notebook and just run it in a loop and orchestrate it. But then when you're talking to your business team and their SQL users and they actually have a load of logic to create facts and dimensions and things, you can do that mix. So I'm going to automate just get data into a clean state where people can start doing things, then give the users, the more SQL people, the ability to build that out and manage it. It's not I'm doing one way or the other. It's I'm picking the right thing for my audience once it's at that point when it's not like massive overhead of looking after another tool.
Can you, as you mentioned, you mix and match between DLT and building the final facts and dimensions. would that whole feature be kind of like under the lineage, or would I miss out on the last portion because I just use custom portions?
So once you can use it, I would wait until GA, but once you can use Unity Catalog and DLT, you've got lineage across things. Currently, I've not tried it.
It works, you get lineage.
But it should work, yeah.
No.
Because I'm just trying to cut the question
There we go.
short. 'cause
So yes.
we got a lot of hands up, so.
Hey, I'm Akam, and so I'm a data scientist, and we are at a point in a project where we are trying to pivot, not pivot, but we are trying to kind of like revamp our system. So my question to you guys is, how would you sort of convince kind of like the old school technology professionalists to migrate to this newer, not new for them at least, new for them database kind of system, management systems, or on cloud tasks and processes and things like that?
So how do we drag old school relational people into the modern era?
Yes.
It's my specialty. Do you want to do a PC version of it?
We should do a PC version of it, to say. Yeah.
No, I mean,
It's recorded, so.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah.
no, I mean it's about addressing pain
Excellent
points. It's about just actually, so you can do the sales pitch, and people have had sales pitches so many times. People are a little bit kind of, a little bit kind of cynical these days. The main thing for me is kind of relational in terms of, if we think about ETL. ETL is the big thing. And it's so weird in terms of all the marketing, like originally on the Databricks side, originally on lots of different companies, ETL wasn't really the focus. It was about, you can make a warehouse, you can serve from it, and there's that thing. And like the whole pipelining of data for me is where that benefit comes in. Because if you're building a all-day SQL warehouse and you're using some kind of graphical ETL tool, using SSIS, using Alteryx, using something to say, drag some boxes and move it. And then you'd like kind of, I need to do that for 10 more tables, and I'd copy and paste it, copy and paste it, and copy and paste it, make a giant schedule, have to test everything. So back, kind of when I started doing things, it was like, your release cycle for a warehouse was like 6 months. So when the business goes, hey, we need this new thing, I'm like, great, we'll add it to the pipeline, see you in 6 months. And we'd go off and look at things. And then we had things like automation, you had things like BIM, you had the ability to inject code into it and just turn a crank and make thousands of the same thing, but you still have to look after it. You still have this massive code footprint. You still have to figure out all that stuff. You still have to deploy it. And deployment is risk. You can have an amazingly slick DevOps pipeline, but there's still things you have to manage in there. And when you move to something that is using something like Python, that is using a declarative language that you can make parameterized, as I said, you can have one Spark notebook that moves data from like bronze to silver and does your cleansing. And I call that same notebook 1,000 times in parallel and pass parameters to cleanse 1,000 tables at once. And you suddenly see the speed, the agility. Someone says, can I get a new table? And you just add the metadata. And you don't have to test the other 900 tables because the code hasn't changed. And you don't get faster DevOps than not deploying. That's just, it's about selling those benefits. And for me, it's that mix. It's going, there's just so much of your pain just actually goes away. So much of the stuff that you've kind of become Stockholm Syndrome conditioned into going, well, this is just a fact of life. This is how warehouses work, goes away. And then the flip side is just making sure it's not that scary, because it feels scary. If you've been working in the industry for 20 years and you're a SQL person, you're so inured to it, and then someone's like, by the way, your skills don't matter anymore, right? And that's kind of what people are resistant to going, no, but I've got my safety, I know my patterns. But then ETL hasn't changed. Data cleansing hasn't changed. People still need to understand how to model data, how to clean data, how to look after that whole pipeline. And it's saying your skills still matter. You can still bring SQL to the table, and we still use SQL for all the business transformation. It's just we pop it into a bit of Python framework. And it's just, yeah.
Yeah, so let me add a little flavor to this, right? So I actually used to work for the SQL Server team, okay? So I switched from SQL Server to building in Spark for precisely what you just said, okay? No matter what we want to claim within data warehouses, they're built for a particular structure. They're built really well for simplicity. No, I'm not trying to knock any of them. Actually, they're actually really well built for that. The problem is that because they're built to be very managed, and they're built for simplicity, that means any new use case that was outside the boundaries of how they designed it, they can't do, or they can't do really well, right? So for example, when SQL Server was trying to do streaming, we had a project called Velocity. It was designed specifically for streaming. Now, I don't even remember what we built any longer because it's too long ago, but the point is that it was trying to take basically database constructs and apply that to streaming. That makes no sense whatsoever, right? Like, you're streaming data. Like, this is where even I'm going like, no, I agree with the Flink people. What are you talking about, right? This is not something you want to go do. Right, but because they were designing and thinking the way they were thinking, they were trying to look at the entire world as a database, right? And so ultimately, even if I can't convince you to come to Spark, using this as the example, or Python or Data Fusion or any of these other systems, the point I'm trying to get at is that each project, each tool has their strengths and has their weaknesses. And ultimately, when it comes to data warehousing systems, yeah, like we'll still use the techniques, but we certainly can't use the technology any longer. Not for all the problems we're trying to solve. Yeah.
And the big argument, we've all heard the Microsoft Fabric F word I'm not meant to mention too much about.
It's okay, I don't care.
It's opinion. It's opinionated.
But
so.
Exactly, it's opinionated. Right.
the SQL Server people have just gone, oh, by the way, we're doing things in a lake house, and even if you write T-SQL, it's still Delta in a lake underneath.
Yeah. And we're going, that's great, congratulations. Yeah. You're about, what, how many years behind?
Yeah.
Opinion, sorry, yeah.
Also, swag. Yeah, the Databricks swags are cooler than SQL Server swag.
I mean, the AA swag we all know is better.
Yeah, no. Even I have to agree with that. Hey, Kaja, what's up, man?
So with the announcements of the Delta kernel, how does that relate to and affect Delta RS and that ecosystem?
You got it. So here we go. Boop. All right. So simple answer. I'm going to give Delta kernel is us learning from the last few years that we have at least 8 different implementations of Delta: Trino, Presto, Flink, Spark, Rust, Kafka Delta Ingest, yada. Okay. What we learned from all of these different systems, and do note they were built by different people. This isn't one set of people that was building it. So the fact that we actually got them to all agree and work on, so that way a Trino can do an insertion while Spark can do a query from Delta table is pretty sweet, right? Except it gets harder and harder and harder. So let me answer the Delta kernel part, and then I'll switch over to Rust directly. So for the kernel part, basically, this is a way for us to simplify that process. We basically take all the metadata processing, all that logic, we place it into kernel. So whether it's Rust, whether it's Spark, Trino, I don't care. It takes care of the metadata. All that's returned is, here are the files, or here's the table you need. And then boom, party hardy, you get to do what you need to do with it. Now, specifically with Delta Rust, we didn't talk about it much, even though you were hanging out with us, okay? But actually the maintainers of the Delta Rust community actually have been working on this for, I'd say, about 4 to 5 months. So we are eventually going to release an experimental version of the Delta Rust API that actually is using Delta kernel. Because from where we're coming from, actually building these systems in native code is extremely important. So not only does this, not only have nothing to worry about in terms of Delta Rust, it's actually placing Delta Rust on even higher ground now. So hopefully that answers. No, you do not. You're good. You're good.
Okay.
I've got a really spicy question just to throw in on top of that. That's all right.
Oh, okay, sure. But you're not getting the sock.
I don't know. I didn't suck. I have so many thousands of those socks.
I know.
So someone approached me with a question yesterday, and I was like, that's a Denny question.
Oh, okay. All right.
So Project Uniform.
Okay.
Or,
Oh, of course. I knew you'd do that. Damn it.
so that's the storage wars are over, right?
Yes, that's what we're trying to do at least.
Yeah.
Yes.
And then that's the big question is, when Iceberg changes protocol, when Hootie changes protocol, how do you keep on top of that?
Okay. So
Without it then kind of just
Right. No. Okay. So let me provide context first,
Yeah.
because maybe they didn't all have the keynote,
That's
and we've got this recorded anyways. Okay. So what we announced today during Michael's keynote was one of the components of Delta 3.0 was Project Uniform. Uniform standing for Universal Format. Long story short, we're all using Parquet. Other people say, oh, we're using Avro. No, you're not. Okay. So we're all using Parquet. We all generate metadata. The trick of the trade is we were actually talking to a lot of the Delta community. They had chosen, for example, Iceberg. And I know it sounds funny from a Delta maintainer, but I'm like, no, that's a perfectly good choice. Each system has their pros, each system has their cons. You just have to be aware of what pro, which cons you're actually working with. So they maybe made their choice like 3 years ago on Iceberg, but they're going like, but I don't want to convert this thing over. That's fair. You've got a few petabytes of data now. That seems like a horrible idea to try to convert it over. So what can you do? Well, we're going like, wait, it's all Parquet. Maybe we can help with the migration by going ahead and generating metadata. Well, in the process of doing it, we're going, wait, we can just generate the metadata and we don't have to migrate at all. Okay, so that's basically the whole context. Now, how do we stay in touch? Because that's what Simon's really asking, was how do we stay ahead of the curve? We work with the community. So we can't announce anything yet because we've just started it, but we are already working with Iceberg contributors and we're already working with Hootie contributors. So that way we can make sure this all stays in sync. So for example, one of the things we're planning to do is also help with Iceberg's own conversion from Delta to Iceberg. Sounds really weird that I'm going to volunteer for that, but like, yes, if you want to actually end the format wars, because if you want to take a theme out of this, we all are talking about LMs now, including even us, because we got sheep up there, right? So why? Because not just because it's cool looking, but because we're all recognizing the fact that we actually have other problems to solve. Okay, so why is any of us slowing anybody down talking about a format war? So basically from where we're coming from is like, look, just end this. I got LLMs to build, I got AI to build, I got data science to build, I got other stuff that I need to go build. I do not want any of you to be suffering from a legitimately good choice that you made 2 years ago, 3 years ago, 5 minutes ago. Right? By us, when we do Delta format, uniform, that allows us to go ahead and make at least some of it, a lot of it, a lot easier for you. That's basically the concept. Does that help?
Yeah.
Bam.
See, it's almost like I had a prepared answer. I promise that wasn't a plan.
No,
Slightly
no.
disappointed.
He just knows that he wants to ask spicy questions, and I'm already prepared for him and spicy questions. That's all. That's all.
Thank you. So 2 very quick questions. One is Hadoop dead, and second, shouldn't we all be scared about everything going to AWS and Azure? Shouldn't the world be scared?
You can
about
answer the first one because I have my opinions and I'm not supposed to give them.
So is Hadoop dead?
Yeah, is Hadoop dead?
I think Hadoop died a long time ago, didn't it?
HDFS is still around.
HDFS is very much still around.
Yeah, so geez, don't be that mean.
It is still the absolute basis of
Oh
all
my
cloud
goodness,
storage.
exactly. Jeez,
Yeah.
don't be so mean like that. Yes, it's dead.
Oh.
No, I mean, we learned a lot from Hadoop, and I actually was, now this is a confession time, I was on the team that helped build what is now known as HD Insight. So I apologize to all of you for doing that.
I don't know what we need to do to get you to atone for that eventually.
Yeah, eventually.
You can keep apologizing.
I
for
know,
that.
I've got at least another 5 years of apologies, right? Because I haven't deprecated it yet.
Yep.
So I still have to apologize. So the idea of it was we're running Hadoop on Windows, which I'm laughing when I say it. But the context is, the problem is not so much was Hadoop a good or bad idea. The context honestly was they never advanced beyond the fact that they basically were stuck up at somewhere between 4 to 8 gigabytes of memory whenever they're running their MapReduce. And so they never advanced the JVM to be able to handle larger memory, and everything had to be written to disk because the HDFS and Hadoop itself was tied together. So that basically became the problem for everything. That's why Hive became so popular for a while, and that's why Spark became popular after that. So that answers the first question.
I'd say there's 2 drivers for it. Sure. One, yeah, sheer performance and the ability to do stuff, and absolutely. Only nerds care about that, come on.
Oh, fair enough.
The other side of things is
We're all
exactly
nerds
what we're
here,
saying earlier. Right, yeah, okay, sorry, yeah, this is real.
That's what we're fine, dude.
The thing we're saying earlier about becoming accessible and mainstream and lowering the bar and all that kind of stuff never really happened with Hadoop.
That's very much so.
You know, so you've
Who likes writing MapReduce functions in Java? Wait, really? Do you really like it? No, you don't.
It just didn't have that evolution. There was evolutions that tried in terms of building Pig and various other things in that
Pig was fine.
ecosystem. But because it didn't kind of solidify and settle and didn't kind of lower that barrier and didn't explode in adoption, it still remained this quite niche technical thing. Huge adoption, loads of places, but not suddenly open to everyone.
Yeah. Ironic for it being an open source project, but we did not answer his second question. What was that again?
Oh, should
Oh,
we
is
be
everything-
terrified about giving cloud providers all our data?
Yeah, well, that's a whole other problem, yeah.
I mean, the official answer, because I've worked with many on-prem companies, and they're like, how is it more safe than our data center? And I'm like, the data center that's downstairs in your office that your IT guys look after, you think is safer than the big cloud providers, ringed fence, proper security, all of that kind of thing. The physical security of these buildings is insane. Of course, there is risk and consideration in terms of putting your data somewhere that you don't manage. But the levels of protection, the levels of redundancy, the levels of the sheer lengths that these companies go to say, this is safer than like any government building. This is insane to try and get anywhere near it, compared to what people have in their own data centers is just massive. That's the whole idea of getting a SaaS platform, getting someone to build something for you, going, well, it's economies of scale. You do this for a living. You've already built all these things around it. What's the risk? What's the danger? What is it? Is it people accessing your data? Is it? Let's give an honorable mention to GCP.
and Oracle Cloud.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's absolutely the risk, but all of these, there are already other smaller cloud providers, for example, that are coming up with the woodworks, for example, that NVIDIA, for example, is investing in, specifically so that way you can get access to the latest GPUs, because the major cloud providers are basically building their own version of GPUs against NVIDIA. So I actually see, especially because of LLMs, I actually see other cloud providers actually popping out of the woodwork now, in all seriousness. Like one of the deals that Oracle and Microsoft did, which is really weird to say, by the way, since I was part of SQL Server and we were fighting with each other for so long, was the fact that if Oracle happened to have the GPUs available, then literally Azure could switch it over and start using Oracle Cloud. Right, so I don't see, there's absolutely a dominance. I'm not pretending the dominance doesn't exist, but I'm also saying that there's absolutely opportunities for other clouds to grow up and actually put some real pressure right now.
So I think I'm just looking at the clock. So I think we got a lot of hands. I think probably
Okay, let's get our
rapid fire round.
Rapid fire
fire.
answers from now on. Okay, all right, cool.
In the medallion architecture, where do you start building surrogate keys, dimension tables, and fact tables?
Go. One, medallion architecture is a terrible design and shouldn't be called that because bronze, silver, gold exist as other things that we use lots in the data community. But in a 3-tier lake, call it what you will, surrogate keys, those kind of business logic, those kind of data modeling, designy things, that's all for the end. So if we're doing things like the first layer, we call it raw, call it bronze. Append only, we're not changing the data. That's essentially your system of record of everything that we've received. Move it into the second layer, that's applying data cleansing, validation. You might be adding in a hash key so you have some kind of unique identifier, not a surrogate key, but some way of saying, actually, this record's come in again. This is now the latest version, depending on if you want to store it as this is my current table or this is my current and my history. Type 4 slowly changing, yeah. And then you're doing your data modeling, you're applying your business logic. The same way we're building warehouses for years, right? You had a staging table, we had a clean table, we had a warehouse table. Works the same. So we now call it bronze, silver, gold. We call it raw, base, enriched, and curated because occasionally we have an enriched layer that we use for schema homogenization if we have a canonical model we're trying to apply. Done.
Boom.
My company just implemented the Databricks Lakehouse. One of the observations that I made was that the SQL cluster, if run 24/7, it could get a bit expensive.
Yeah, don't run your cluster 24/7.
Yeah.
But
I'm a
how would
Databricks
you
employee,
actually-
even I'm saying that. No, don't do that.
So I'm actually thinking of offloading some of the workload, especially for dashboarding over. So coming from like Synapse, we have serverless
so
SQL
sorry.
more of a usage-based pricing like Athena or Spectrum. So are there any things like that, like where it could save some money, but then because I don't have serverless yet, not in my region, so I don't know what to do.
I mean, so that's answer one, is use serverless. But if you can't use serverless, that's fine. Certainly, I mean, so do you need 24/7 access? Do your users need to be able to access it for every? Yeah, but then you can plan ahead. You can set an auto terminate of 10 minutes, half an hour, whatever it needs to be. Run a query at the start to then start it up, and then just leave it turned on during the day, and at least reduce it down to your 8-hour working day, which is going to cut your costs by 60%. certainly only have it turned on when you need to. If the poking it and preempting it and the auto timeout doesn't work, set up a little operation and use the API and turn it on, turn it off manually, like we used to do with Infra. You can control it. Don't leave it turned on just for the ease of things. Serverless would certainly help that.
Yes,
It just makes it a lot easier.
Yes, we're slowly getting that region. Yes. Next question.
Okay.
Oh, there.
I hope there's an easy button, and I don't know if there is, but the situation is our client rebranded, and so they have a new name, they have a new tenant, we have our data lake in the old tenant, we want to move it to a new one, so we want to move all of our Databricks tables, everything that we made. Is there some kind of tool or something with Databricks that could make it easy to go, I'm going to change tenants and I'm going to move everything into a data lake?
Well, it depends on the current state, right? I mean, if you think about it, right? If you're already in UC, then it'll be relatively straightforward. Spin up another UC, copy over the metadata, and then you can basically point to whatever tenant you need to point to. Now, in the case of example, you're not using UC and you've already got Delta tables, well then, honestly, you just literally copy the Delta tables over to your new tenant, and then literally regenerate the metadata from there. Because our metadata for Delta tables literally is, what's the table name and which file system I'm pointing to. That's it.
Yeah, so I think there's two approaches. There's either copy data or there's migrate the resources.
Fair enough.
If you're literally so certainly I only know the Azure side of this. If you're in an Azure subscription and you want to move actual Azure resources to a different subscription or tenant, there is a service to do that. You can either say this resource move to another subscription in the same tenant, or you can say this whole subscription move it to a different tenant. Now, there's risks in there. If you're moving subscription to a different tenant, it disappears and it reappears a few hours or days later. And it's like, I assume this is going to be okay. But the services, if you speak to Microsoft, to help you do that. But it depends whether you want to, if you do a copy over, you can leave it running in parallel. You can check it's okay. You've got that barrier, but you need to have some kind of compute sat copying your data over. If you physically move the resources, it's a little bit black boxy. It's cheaper, but they are the two approaches that you would use. Oh, yeah.
Then you need to actually copy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So easy, even if you go ahead and do the easy version, you still have to copy it afterwards.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
And then set the old one on fire.
Exactly. Yeah. Sorry, what was the next question?
Right, 2 minutes.
Yeah, 2 minutes. So who's got the? Oh, there you are. Sorry.
So I have a question about pandas UDFs, which I understand that pandas UDFs are generally more efficient than Python UDFs.
Correct.
Well, yes. My question is, what about Scala UDFs, and what about native Spark, if it's something you could write using Spark?
So,
functions?
all right. So Scala UDFs, by definition, are Spark, or Scala and Spark, okay? Because UDFs are just user-defined functions. All UDFs within Spark are basically Scala, okay? The reason we created vectorized UDFs, or pandas UDFs, I don't like saying pandas, I prefer vectorized, it sounds cooler. But the reason for vectorized UDFs is because it allows us to actually not put the data in memory on the driver, but to actually distribute the data down to each of the workers for Spark. So in other words, you can distribute the workload, and then Python can actually process it down at the individual workers, okay? So basically, when it comes to performance, Scala, UDFs, and Spark are the exact same thing. When it comes to vectorized UDFs, pandas UDFs, provide you follow the instructions of what we have for vectorized UDFs, a good sizable chunk of, we're talking on 99 to 99.99% of the performance. In other words, it's very little difference between Spark / Scala / then vectorized.
Cool. I'd still avoid vectorized pandas UDFs.
I love vectorized UDFs.
Just need more documentation.
You're just scared.
I'm scared. I mean, the big switch for us, lots of people didn't want to write Scala. They didn't want to
Which is understandable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's a non-functional programming language. That's what it's called, right? Non-functional?
Something like that.
And then, I'm going to get burned by Scala people.
Yeah. Now they don't want to talk to you at all, dude.
But the main thing is people were using pandas because it's nice and safe, and you know like pandas. And the SQL UDFs that came in are Spark native, and so work the same way as the Scala ones. Yeah. So if you need to have a UDF in that mix, and you're trying to do some stuff and you wanted to run at the cell level, you want to run efficiently, the SQL ones are actually a really good option to do that, because you could just write SQL and then it works the same as a scale-off function in a SQL Server, and it's not going to get the performance tank you get from other things.
So just going to have to pause you there. Are you guys okay if people have more questions, they can come up to you afterwards as
Yeah,
well.
absolutely.
So you can
Actually,
mob,
you can't. I have to run.
you can mob Simon afterwards
Okay.
if you have more questions. But can we take one more? Just
I
Sure,
mean,
one more.
As long as we don't get dragged off. And there's socks and stickers and things if people want it after as well.
Boom. Yes.
Just going to Delta Live tables and I guess somewhat of the medallion schema. When is there a best guideline on when to use or define a table as a streaming table versus materialized view?
It depends if you need to store it and
Yeah.
access that mid-state.
Really, I mean, it really is your use case, honestly, right? Because the point of switching to a streaming table is not just because you want to do streaming specifically, though obviously that's the first use case. But the other problem or the other scenario is the fact that if you've got, for example, trigger available now type scenarios, where basically lots of files are coming into the system, yeah, it's a bunch of like just little batches, right? Then yes, actually switching to streaming makes all the sense in the world. When Comcast went ahead and went from 640 VMs to 64 and went from 84 jobs to 3, it's because they switched to structured streaming. And Delta, of course, yeah, because everything's Delta related, but yes. So yeah, your use case, really. Okay.
All right. You need
Cool.
to vote. Who gets your sheep?
Well, I'm biased, so I'm really good.
Do it. Do we have a vote? Anyone have a favorite question?
Anyone have a favorite question here? Yes, I was saying that my bias is with you. So.
Okay. And there are more sheep as part of the summit thing anyway.
Yes, there's more sheep downstairs.
So do summit quest, do your things, go see sheep. Otherwise, thanks for coming.
Yeah. Thank you very much.